Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it is a place where I like to geek out about my favourite passion, which you might be able to see a large one in front of me today and all around me. I talk about tropical houseplants. So today, as I mentioned, you might be able to see the plant that I want to talk about here, and I will move it a bit more into frame and then put it back down again because it's big and it's heavy. So you might be able to see the sheer size of this plant, and I will tilt it down so you might be able to see the foliage just that tiny bit clearer. This is the Dieffenbachia Reflector, and you might be able to see by what the camera is taking on the screen right now as to why this is called the reflector. Let me just put it down because it is very heavy, and let me just switch it around so you can see me as well. Right, so this is a Dieffenbachia, and the Dieffenbachia, by its common name, is known as, and it's one of these glorious names, it's not really PC, but it is called the dumb cane. And the Dieffenbachia, or the dumb cane, there is a very specific reason why it is called that in its common name, and it is because every part of this plant is toxic. And as far as I've done my research, if ingested by animals, by kids, even by full-grown adults, this will have an effect on your airways essentially, or your mouth or your tongue or something around kind of your neck and mouth area essentially. And it kind of makes you dumb in the sense that it makes it very difficult to talk. And I think it causes respiratory or breathing issues as well, because things kind of inflame quite a bit around your kind of oral region, essentially. And again, based on my research, what I have seen is that this is a plant where they, in the past, I think in World War II or World War I, this was one where the fluids essentially that come out of the plant when it's cut were used as a form of torture. The dark side of houseplants. I don't think people were expecting me to be talking about torture or one of the world wars in this video. But yes, if what I read is correct, it kind of also makes sense based on kind of the effects that this plant will have. This was a bit of a dangerous plant. It still is a bit of a dangerous plant. So Dieffenbachias are beautiful, and you can see why it's called a cane, because after it loses some of its bottom leaves, it does look a bit like a bamboo cane. But yeah, it is a plant that, beautiful as it is, not one to have around pets or young children. Definitely not one at this size, because generally you'll probably have to have it on the floor or maybe just slightly raised, so pets and small kids can probably reach it. Maybe a smaller one could be really high up on a table where a pet or a small child won't be able to reach it. But just exercise caution with a dumb cane as well. I would still suggest that if you ever cut a leaf or a stem or anything like that and you get any of the sap on your hands, wash it off immediately, because any kind of lingering sap that might be there and you might then touch your mouth, it might cause you issues. I might be overcautious, but I would rather be overcautious with a plant that has got this much of a reputation. But now that a massive disclaimer has been put out there, and just be careful with this plant generally, can we just take a moment to appreciate quite how stunning it is? So you've got the midrib, which, because it's creating that much of a contrast between the midrib and the rest of the leaf, sometimes it almost looks that that midrib is fluorescing. So that's kind of obviously where the name of this plant, the reflector part of it, comes. And if you do try to take a picture, it almost does look like that middle vein does reflect the light back in relation to the rest of it. The leaf has got a slight velvety touch, very, very slight. It's not glossy by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, you've got those darker patches and those lighter patches, and on the back, it still has some of that patterning, but it's a bit more faded. You do get a bit of an inflorescence, nothing significant, so I usually cut it back. And this is a plant, as with most dumb canes, and most Dieffenbachia, where essentially it is a plant that will do okay in slightly lower light. They are generally Dieffenbachias, the slightly more green versions, like for instance this one as well to a certain point, are sold as low light plants, and I have said this over and over again, just because a plant is being sold as a low light plant or a low light tolerant plant, the key word there is tolerant, it just means that it will just die off a bit slower in a darker area. If you truly want a plant like this to thrive, give it medium to bright indirect light and it will do a lot better for you. You will have more foliage and bigger foliage, but something that you do need to remember about this plant, and this is something that some people tend to forget, is when you've lost those lower leaves because they're too old or they're not getting enough light and they drop off and you've got like a really bushy plant at the top, you will usually have bare stems at the bottom. You will never get more leaves coming out at the bottom. So just bear that in mind. So you might have quite a woody base to this plant and a bushier top. That's absolutely fine. This is definitely a plant that I've enjoyed having for about a year now, and this was about half its size a year ago, and I got it from a local plant shop which I think delivers nationally via the postal service in the UK at least, which is Turn It Tropical. But very, very, very cool plant. I've usually not really ever shown off this plant either on my Instagram, which by the way, if you're not following me, there's a link to my Instagram in the description down below. But I've not really shown it too much on my Instagram, and I've not shown it too much on here purely because it's upstairs. It's in a room that makes it really difficult to move in and out of quite quickly. It's a big plant, it's in a big pot. Whenever I do remember that, I need to maybe show that on YouTube or show that on Instagram, is usually when I've just watered it, and it takes a while for it not to be dripping everywhere, so it usually hasn't happened. So you finally get to see the Dieffenbachia Reflector that I've got. Now let's talk about soil with this one. So this is a plant that does store quite a lot of that moisture in that cane-like structure that it grows from. So it's a plant that I've currently got it, and it's doing a lot better since I've done this. Originally I tried it in a light airy aroid soil mix. It was retaining the water a bit too much, so I've flipped it over to cactus and succulent soil mix, also amended further so it has even more drainage with perlite, and it is loving life now. It's getting watered I think once every 12 to 14 days, so it doesn't need watering all that frequently. It takes a while to use the water up, and I will only ever usually water this when it is bone dry in the soil, and then I'll make sure that I flush it through fully and everything is fine after that. It doesn't need an awful lot of humidity. We've talked about light, we've talked about soil, pests, and again, it might just be because this plant is as toxic as it is. I don't think I have, oh no, I do lie. I have seen one type of pest that only this plant will get in my home, and it's aphids. Aphids were the one things that I was battling with this plant, and I've had it every summer so far. On the new growth, just when spring comes around, usually the aphids will attack that one of the newest unfurling leaves, and I have to spray it down with neem oil once and then another time again in 2 weeks' time, and it's fine. But a very, very cool plant nonetheless. Just be really, really careful around yourself, around your pets, and around small children to not get their hands. I can't stress this enough with this plant. But a very cool plant nonetheless. The other one that most people are aware of because it's more of a quote-unquote rare plant is the Dieffenbachia tricolor, and that's the one that has that kind of camouflage or that kind of camo look to the leaves. That one, from what I've heard, is exceptionally difficult to grow. You do get a very long cane with that, with like a couple of small tiny leaves at the top, and people have struggled with it. This to me at least, and this might just be a personal opinion, I prefer this to the Dieffenbachia tricolor, and, or is it the Aglaonema tricolor? Maybe it's the Aglaonema tricolor actually, I might be entirely wrong. But this is very, very similar to me, and I think even better, and definitely a lot easier to keep happy. You don't have to do very much, you need to remember to water it. It doesn't need an awful lot of fertilizer. Dieffenbachias generally don't need an awful lot of fertilizer, so I think I only fertilize this plant 4 or 5 times in the year, and that's usually maybe once in the winter and autumn time, and then the rest of it will be in the growing period in the spring and summer. But yeah, really, really nice, cool, easy plant. A bit hardcore with its story in terms of how toxic it can be, but as long as you're aware of that and you're comfortable with it, and maybe you don't have small kids or you don't have pets that you have to worry about, then that's fine. But yeah, Dieffenbachia Reflector, very, very cool plant. And I think that's everything I wanted to say for this video. So if you've got any questions, comments, do drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.